everybody doing, all right? So this is really a loose kind of, I don't know if you've been to other like guitar clinics. This is not a guitar clinic. I don't do clinics. I'm on tour here, and we have a Billy Idol show tomorrow. So Floating Guitars thought that'd be a great opportunity to, connect with some of you guys. Come to the great music store that's named after me, of course. And so a little bit of history is that Godin is my longest standing endorsement, period. After I had done the Vince Neil record, I decided I had gone to see, I'll backtrack a little bit. So with Vince Neil, we were out on the road, we were supporting Van Halen, we were playing at 150 decibels every night and living the rock star life, and with everything that you would imagine a Vince Neil existence would be, which was great. But after that, I had gone to see Paco de Lucia, the flamenco guitar player. And the very first teacher that I had that I really identified with was a flamenco guitar teacher. So flamenco guitar has always been in the background. I started on nylon guitar when I was about 7.5 years old. Didn't get an electric guitar till I was 13. So I have all that background of classical and nylon, and all of my guitar heroes were from the early 70s, guys like Steve Howe and from Steve Hackett. These guys that incorporated nylon guitar, and it's always been part of what I do, although it's very rarely used in Billy Idol. After the Vince Neil record, I wanted to, after seeing Paco de Lucia, I wanted to reconnect with some of my acoustic roots, and decided to do an acoustic-based record, and had read somewhere in one of the guitar magazines about this guitar that could track MIDI, but it was nylon string, and I was going to be at the NAMM show, and I approached Godin. I met Robert and said, Billy Idol guitar player, and I'm going to get ready to do this acoustic-based record. I'd love to try one of your guitars. I was very dubious. I thought, how the hell is it going to track MIDI? It's plastic strings. It actually is the best tracking guitar for MIDI that I've ever used, I guess because there's very few overtones. So that started my relationship with Godin, and ever since then, I've played Godin guitars. I use them live. I use the two guitars that I'll be playing tonight, which are the nylon string, a steel string, which I use for Eyes Without a Face, and then the LGXT, which does everything but brew you coffee. It's got piezo, it's got electric, it's I use that for Flesh for Fantasy. I trigger horns with that, and it's great because my involvement with the company, I've seen Godin expand into other areas. Now their electric line is like kicking ass, and they're full-bodied acoustic. So and it's a family company, and all of the guys, all of the people that I deal with really have been fantastic, and so I'm really happy to be here on behalf of them. I'm going to show you some of the things that I do with the guitars. So what I have up here, this is Frank Falvo, is my trusty guitar tech. If it sucks tonight, it's Frank's fault.
Come on, Frank.
If it's brilliant, it's all on me. No. So Frank has been kind enough to bring my live. I have two different rigs, my electric rig, and this is my acoustic rig. So I'm using the new Rolling, what is that, GM800? The new guitar synth, which is like half the size of the one we were using. And it's working out really well with the Godin transducers, and so I'll be using that. All of the synth stuff that you hear, anything other than guitar is coming from that. And this is all, this is literally, you'll be on stage with me tomorrow, and so I got a couple of tracks that I'll play too. What I do during the course of the Billy Idol show is I do an unaccompanied solo. And it's a nylon-based solo. And the reason the way that that came about was when we were out supporting Van Halen, and Vince said, "Hey man, you got to do a guitar solo." And I thought, yeah, if I pick up the guitar and do an electric guitar solo in about an hour, that guy's going to come up here and play Eruption. And it don't get better than that. And I thought, well, what do I do that's going to be unique, that I'm not trying to compete with Ed, or nobody can compete with that guy, but it's unique to what I do. So that started my acoustic solo, and I've done that all around the world, in Japan and everywhere, and it's Billy Idol is gracious enough to give me a solo spot to do that. And so I'll do that for you first, and then I'll explain some other things, and then I'll play along with some backing tracks. And then I'll take questions, and if you need anything signed or anything like that, we'll do that at the end of the whole thing. Now, I do trust Frank. That the guitar would be handed to me perfectly in tune. I love giving him shit. He's actually my wife's cousin. But we didn't know that when he came on board. She didn't know that. I said, "Do you know Frank Falbo?" Well, there's a Falvo family from Chicago. She's from Chicago. So there's no nepotism. Frank is the best freaking guitar tech, not only that I've ever worked with, but that there is, period. He's awesome.
Yeah.
you can hear how well it incorporates with the guitar synth. What's really cool about this guitar synth, and it's really, I mean, it used to be you had to, you know, I was one of the first people to bring one of the Roland guitar synths into the country. I went to Japan and they showed me, I don't know if you've ever seen the one that has like this big bar, GR700. Cost thousands of dollars, and, you know, didn't track that well. And now these are, you know, pretty reasonably priced. And the actual pickups that Godin uses are, you can select them in the unit. So you can really fine tune how you play your playing style to the unit. So it's really within everyone's reach now, and it's really the next generation of guitar synth for me. So yeah, so obviously, you know, that's a nylon guitar. That's the solo that I do, and I can show you. There's a very similarly is the steel string guitar, and I'll show you. I use that for Eyes Without Face, and I have a patch for that I'll show you. These are all my stage guitars, so these are, you know, this one's a little goofy because I wanted it, looks white, but it glows in the dark. So, so it's kind of cool. But we're going to be introducing, we've been speaking about introducing a Steve Stevens model, much like that. There's going to be some other additions, some cool little specialties about it, but very similar to that guitar. So this is another synth patch with this guitar. So if you want to see something cool, if you go online on YouTube, recently Billy and I are celebrating the 40th anniversary of the Rebel Yell record. And one of the things we did is we went to the top of the Empire State Building with my Godin, and we performed. We do this a lot. We do, you know, just the two of us show up and play some of our tunes, because all of our songs were written on, two guys sitting in a room playing acoustic guitars. And that's been that way since the day we met, and we still do it that way. So that's a cool video. I mean, the footage from the drones, and for me growing up in New York, to be able to go up there and perform is like wow, pitch me is amazing. So, but the other thing is that during Flesh for Fantasy, let's see here, yeah. So one of the things I do on the LGXT, which is the electric, but I can show you. I do like horn stabs and stuff like that. it's a lot of stuff. So yeah, it's just a whole nother thing. What's cool is the Godin is really well equipped to work with this. You have these two buttons here that are program select. So I can go through different programs and I have no idea what's in here, so. Those are beautiful strings, they really are. So yeah, it's really useful. This guitar it's just great. Yeah, like I said, I started on acoustic guitar, but being able to like replicate all this other stuff is really, really cool. So I'm going to switch back to the nylon, and I think I have a couple of backing tracks that I downloaded from YouTube, so nothing really special. I was so fucking unprepared for this. It was just like, I'm on tour, and it was like an opportunity to come and play some guitar for you guys.
Yeah, right.
So I've never played to these tracks before, so we're in for an adventure. So you can do what I do if you have an acoustic or something. I put in on YouTube, Flamenco backing track. And these are what came up. I picked a couple of them. Looking pretty good, looking good. Oh yeah, there we go. It's getting warmer in here. Let's see what we got here. We'll start with this one. It's a slow A minor. So I am definitely a white boy that plays flamenco style. And all of the, obviously the traditional flamenco players play with their fingers. But if you ever want to take, or grab onto some of the flamenco stylings, or you don't have to be a kid growing up in Spain to have it influence your music or stuff. Go on YouTube, look at any of the Paco de Lucia stuff, or Sabicas, who was the original. See, flamenco guitar used to be solely an accompaniment instrument behind the dancers, and Paco used to accompany a very famous flamenco singer named Cameron de la Isla. And then Paco started to incorporate some of the jazz elements and put the guitar out front. And a lot of the flamenco purists say, oh, this is, he had electric guitar, fretless, and electric bass, but he was the one to bring it out of the tradition. And then he started to collaborate with Al Di Meola and John McLaughlin. And so he's really the godfather of modern flamenco. But there's new guys who are taking it even further, using guitar synth with it. But if you go on YouTube, there's so much stuff that you can watch, and there's they have their own language that they use, but it's really, really cool. And because I really didn't know anything much about flamenco, so for me it was really refreshing, because I've been playing electric guitar for so many years, and having this other influence and style in my playing. And it's taken me all around the world. When I did my Flamenco Go-Go record, I recorded in France, Japan, England, and all I had was my flamenco guitar with me, and it was really, really, really cool, and it was a way to kind of ignite the spark in my playing outside of just playing rock and roll. So if you have any interest in that, look up Paco de Lucia. There's another guy named Gerardo Nunez, who's another master of flamenco guitar. And there's all these you'll find young kids that are just blindingly great. A lot of them, grow up with it in their family and stuff. So it's really, really, really cool art form. And then if you read about the stories of flamenco, because it's a gypsy nomadic music, and there's a lot of soul to it. There's really some of the stories that you'll read about how these people have survived, and it's really, really, really cool. So there's one other piece I'll play for you. I think it's a little bit faster, but these are what are called rumbas. That's they have different names for the rhythms, and so these rumbas, they follow a very similar chord pattern, which is great, because you can fake it like I do. If you know. See? That's why he's here. So a lot of them follow that traditional, A minor, G, F, E. That's like a very typical rumba. So let's see, what key is this one in? Oh, B minor. It'd be very similar to what I just played. They're just changing the chords around. you want to know any of my history and all? Does that shit interest you at all? So I grew up in New York, and I grew up in the real heyday of guitar and folk music. So this is when I got my first guitar, because my older brother is 5 years older than me. All of his friends played guitar, and there was a protest singer who came from our neighborhood named Phil Oakes. And his sister was my first guitar teacher. Phil was as important as Bob Dylan was in the New York folk scene. But this was a time when, you know, FM radio was just getting started, so you had the beginning of Led Zeppelin and Black Sabbath, Cream, Hendrix. So, I mean, everybody played guitar, everybody. And so I really took to it, and fortunately I had a very supportive family, and they put up with me being down in the basement with my first electric guitar and amplifier and a fuzz box. Oh man, they fucking hated the fuzz box. My dad said, oh, his joke was, hey, can you play a song for me? Yeah, Dad, what do you want to hear? Play Far, Far Away. And my mom would say, you know, it's okay when you play, but when you plug in that box. Suddenly I was Jimi Hendrix playing Foxy Lady. Not very well, though. So, and then I went to the High School Performing Arts, which is where the Fame School was based. That was, I grew up in Rockaway, which is a beach area outside of Manhattan. It's part of Queens. And then, so every day I was in Manhattan. And what they screwed up with was that we had our music classes in the morning and our academic classes in the afternoon after lunch. So we're on 46th Street. What's on 48th Street? All the music stores. I'd leave for lunch and never come back. And the guys in the music stores weren't actually going to report me to the truant officers, so I spent all of my days playing guitars and trying out. I mean, this was like when they'd be hanging, 59 Les Pauls in the window, and you could get them for, $500-$600. It's crazy. I wish I had a time machine. But, and this was just at the time when New York club scene was really starting to happen. Places like CBGB's and Max's and all this. So I joined a band. I joined a cover band, and I played all of the tri-state area. I dropped out of school, by the way. I got my GED, but, and then I joined a band. We used to have a local newspaper called the Village Voice, and there was an ad for a cover band. That's what you did back then. This is like the late 70s. Joined a cover band, and we did the same circuit as Twisted Sister and so many other bands like that, and you could make a really good living playing there. And we played to 2,000 people a night in a club, and we had our own truck, we had our own PA, we had a quadraphonic PA system. This thing was unbelievable. And I had the drummer in the band was like the band leader, and he was brilliant at sound engineering, and I learned so much. I really apprenticed under this guy. But eventually I left the band. I moved into Manhattan. I joined an original band because I knew that the playing cover music at that time was like, it just wasn't, I wasn't going to make records doing that. And that's what I wanted to do. I wanted to be on a record. And so I joined an original band, and we recorded an album for Island Records that was shelved. But at the end of that period, we picked up management from a guy named Bill Aucoin who managed Kiss. And he believed in me, and his office said, well, we'll continue to manage you. We'll find the right situation for you. And I would say within 2 months of leaving that band, Bill called me and said, have you ever heard of Billy Idol? And I said, yeah. This is just when like Dancing with Myself was being played in the clubs and stuff. So we met, and we came from vastly different musical backgrounds, and this is a really good lesson for all musicians, which is, first of all, skills pay bills. You can never know too much about music to know about the history or technique or any of this kind of stuff. So Billy had been in a punk rock band called Generation X and moved to America, had hooked up with his producer, and the last thing that he needed was a punk rock guitar player because he was looking to do new kind of music, and that included his love of the Doors and everything from the Doors to Elvis to everything that you hear in a Billy Idol record. We bonded over so many different styles of music, and the last thing that punks liked was progressive rock, which is where I came from. But I said, look, isn't it better to have somebody who has a lot of capability and you can kind of put it through the colander and find the stuff that you need, as opposed to a guy who knows 3 chords and is a punk rock guy, and that's all you're ever going to get. And I've always thought that was a really good thing. Have knowledge of all different things, have knowledge of, I listen to a lot of orchestral music, soundtracks. I don't just listen to guitar. As a matter of fact, I very rarely listen to guitar music because unless somebody comes along like, for us it was Alan Holdsworth or Guthrie Govan, who I think is one of the newest brilliant guitar players, or the young guitar player out of Italy, Mario Macuso or something. Matteo. Totally revolutionizing the way he played guitar. So somebody like that will catch my attention, but I don't listen to a lot of stuff that's similar to the kind of music I make because I don't want it to influence. I don't want to be the same as what's out there. So I listen to a lot of different stuff. So that was my selling point to Billy Idol. Was like, man, I can play anything. You show me the direction. And that's really what I needed. I needed somebody with a vision. I was a really skilled guitar player, didn't know a hell of a lot about writing songs, learned that from being with Billy, learned production, learned how to be an entertaining guitar player, make what you're doing on the guitar enjoyable to people that could give 2 craps whether you're a guitar player or not. So I learned, that's how our partnership worked, and we, sometimes you just meet people. It's like a marriage or something. You have to respect the other person, give them their space, and be proud of what they're doing. And I couldn't be more proud of the guy. I mean, it's 42 years later, and we go, I don't, it wasn't like the day we met. We said, yeah, we're going to work together for 42 years. But it's those things that work, because he knows. Here's the other thing as a musician, I don't have a separate agenda other than bringing the best to the table for a Billy Idol record. If I'm working with another artist, I'm not one of those guitar players who's waiting for the 16-bar guitar solo to go, notice me, notice me. I love being a part of the band. I love turning around to the drummer and locking in, and to me, that's the enjoyable part, and collaborating, because it's like playing a sport or anything. It's having that communication with other musicians, jamming, because I still do all that silly stuff. Just jam with musicians, get in a room, and not for any reason. We're not going to make a record or anything. Just for the joy of it, for the love of it, for the fun of it. Then you go out afterwards, have a couple of beers, and it's that's what music is really about, and especially being a guitar player. So that's that's really that's my history and how I met Billy and all that stuff. So you guys got questions? Start here.
How did your project with Bosio 11 happen? Did you enjoy it?
I did enjoy it. This gentleman is asking about, I did 2 records with drummer Terry Bozzio and bass player Tony Levin. And obviously, if you know music, those 2 guys are like, up here. And the story that I got was that Terry's manager said, hey, you should do an instrumental record with other musicians. Go in the studio, nothing planned, and improvise. And they gave him a list of guitar players, and it was the usual list. This is what Terry told me. And my name wasn't on the list, but Terry said, hey, what about Steve Stevens? And they went, oh, that's interesting. Because Terry was a monster drummer, came from Frank Zappa, but it also had success with Missing Persons in the kind of pop thing. I think he recognized we both had this similar trajectory. So I got together with Terry first when he was living in Austin, and we just got together, jammed, and then we said, well, we need a bass player, and we both kind of said, well, ultimate guy would be Tony Levin, but he'll never do it. And as it turned out, he was in between gigs with Peter Gabriel and King Crimson, and we just had this little 10-day window to get him in. So we did 2 records together, totally improvised. And it surprised people because I really got to show off my prog roots and I know Terry would play people the record and not tell them who the guitar player was. And they go, oh, is that so-and-so, da-da-da-da. And we go, no, Steve Stevens. Yeah, what? It's totally different style for me, so that's how I got to work with them, yeah. Okay?
How did the Top Gun gig come about?
So you never know, that's the business. We were recording Billy's 3rd record with Last Smile, and Billy's producer brought in a guy named Harold Faltermeyer. Now Billy's producer's name is Keith Forsey. Keith and Harold worked together when they started doing Donna Summer's records in Germany. Harold comes over to do keyboards on Whiplash Smile and mentions to me in passing, working on this movie, this Tom Cruise movie. I think all Tom had done up to then was Risky Business. So, the Risky Business guy, yeah. And he said, yeah, would you be willing to play guitar on it? So Saturday night after our session with Idol, we finished and this was the days of the multi-track tape, put the multi-track on for Top Gun. I think the whole session took us about 3 hours to do, and the theme was written, da-da-da-da-da. That's what he had, and it was just a very basic kind of demo of it. I did that, we put a guitar solo on it, 3 hours, and I never really thought much about it afterwards, and then Harold called me and said, movie was a big success, which I knew it would be. I mean, it had a guy who was ready to be a superstar, and then Harold said, nominated for a Grammy Award. Get the fuck out of here. This was really when rock musicians didn't get Grammy Awards. Now it's a little different. And so as it happened, I wasn't going to go to the Grammys, but Billy Idol was performing that year on the Grammys. We were supporting Whiplash Smile. So I was there anyway. And I said, I might as well go to the award thing. And that Grammy was given out in the afternoon, and Harold kept saying, we're going to win this thing. Harold. And we won. We won a Grammy for it. So. But it was great for my parents because for them it legitimized all those years of that fuzz box. So you win Grammys. That's how it came about. Yes.
Have you done anything new with Deadline Ritual?
No, we haven't. So Deadline Ritual was a project I was involved with Geezer Butler, Matt Sorum, and a singer named Frankie Perez. And we had in between doing a Billy Idol tour and getting ready for another Billy Idol record, I had a period of time that I was available. And we went into the studio, and I gotta tell you, for me, I'm still a fan. And when I got in the room and I'm plugged in, I'm playing with Geezer Butler, and you hear, and he's one of the most identifiable bass players. That sound was, I got chills. I was like, wow, this is incredible. That sound that I grew up with is, but everyone had a small amount of time, and it just, we went over and we recorded a couple of tracks, and then we went over to Europe, did a couple of festivals and stuff, but some things are just not meant to be, and it just kind of a lot of people got involved in it that shouldn't have been involved because once again, they saw dollar signs before the music. Although we had written a bunch of stuff, but they kind of put the business before it, and I didn't like that, you know. Billy Idol and I have never discussed money or business or anything. We got lawyers for that shit. And that's why we last for 42 years. It's just about the music for us. You know? Yeah.
What's your practice routine and any tips on maintaining that discipline?
Well, there's no better practice than being on the road because you get to play, you know, you do sound check and you get to play. Muscle memory is really important to me. I probably should practice new shit because there's a lot of new stuff out there. And but whenever I pick up a guitar, my purpose is to write a song because it's always we have a new Billy Idol record that we've recorded that'll be out I think April of next year. So whenever I'm working, you know, sitting down, in my mind I'm like, well, should I practice, no, maybe, that doesn't pay the bills for me. A good song is, I'm always thinking about it that way, but I should practice more. A lot of my contemporary guitar players really practice, and they're getting better. And what's great is you can always learn new stuff. So, but I'll probably put aside some time. I'm done after this tour. We have a little bit of a break. Record's finished, so that's a great opportunity to learn some new things. And I've made bookmarks of some guitar stuff that I've seen that really interests me. Like I said, there's all these new guys who are really playing and utilizing techniques and ideas that are really foreign to me. So if I can absorb just a little bit of it, I'm an old guy, but if I can get just a taste of it, it's going to enhance what I do. Next. Yeah.
For guitar players, like, how much do you think we should get into the technical part? Because I believe that is all about the music and the feel and playing it live.
Yeah.
So what's your take on it?
I mean, it's a different world now because you've got all these guys who are on YouTube and they're getting millions of views and they're doing ungodly stuff. For me, I'm a band guy. I'm like same as like Slash. Slash's solo things are, they're bands. That's the way we always. I can't think of a Jimmy Page solo record. It's. I don't know. I guess that's just a different era for me. That being said, it's important, like I said, skills pay bills. Have the technique to carry out. My one regret is I don't read and write music well. And I think that's something that's really useful for guitar players. And it has come to bite me when I've gone in. I remember there was a movie, after Top Gun, I got asked to do soundtracks and play on them. And there was a movie called Assassins with Antonio Banderas and Stallone. And I went in and they put the music in front of me. And I said, you got the wrong guy. But what it was, here's the other thing, is that the music, that segment of the score was written by a keyboard player. And it was nothing like what a guitar player would play. And he played it for me, the little demo of the sampled guitar. And I said, just indulge me for a minute here. As a guitar player, this is what I would play against those changes. And that ended up being what was used. So it's different for everyone. I do believe that it's good to read and write music. It doesn't take away from your emotion. A lot of guys who are like, purists and, man, there's no emotion if you're just doing that. Tell that to Steve Lukather. That guy can read and write and play like nobody's business. So it's a balance, but having a knowledge, I have more of a knowledge of arrangement than I do reading and writing because I listen to a lot of orchestral music. So I arrange all of the Billy Idol stuff. I arrange the parts, and that's where I guess theory comes in. I have a good understanding of theory, but I'm not a good sight reader. So.
But you're about the music, which is important.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I'm a song guy, you know, and man, if you just look at my career, look at who I've worked with: Billy Idol, Joni Mitchell, Robert Palmer, Michael Jackson. They're all singers, you know, and that's what I love. I look at like what I do is almost like a film director. I love accompanying the story, and I'm one of those guitar players. If I get hired for a session, I want to see the lyrics because that's my roadmap. I want to know what the story is, and they go, "You're one of the few guitar players that wants to see the words." And I go, "Well, that tells me the whole thing. That tells me how I should feel about it." So, way in the back.
Yeah, hey, you mentioned writing acoustically with Billy Idol.
Yeah.
I want to know how about you go from acoustic songs to new wave hits with electric guitars, electronics. Like, what's the process there if you're involved?
Well, we always write on acoustic because you can hear the melody great, and the acoustic guitar is almost like a little orchestra for me. And then, you know, it's like you got your bass, your cello, you know, violas and violin, and you know, I think of things in terms of different.
You break up the guitar chords.
Yeah, so and that can accompany a singer great and find the song, whereas on electric you don't have that range.
No.
But then when we get in the studio, the song, kind of the aggression of it and the energy of it will dictate. I mean, obviously, you know, Eyes Without a Face was a ballad, you know, there's no doubt about it. Flesh for Fantasy started as kind of a ballad, but then became a kind of Motown thing. Rebel Yell was always going to be a rock tune, Blue Highway and all those kind of things, even though they started in acoustic. So I think just the energy, you know, will dictate.
Amazing. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's the first time I noticed, why is there two outputs on the guitar?
Oh. So this is for the acoustic, for here. And this is the MIDI that goes to the synth, which is each of these pickups travels on their own channel, and so that's why I think you can have it so that the regular guitar can be through here, but we like to keep them separate, totally isolated, and my sound man likes to have control over that. Yeah.
What's one song that you love to play live?
Eyes Without a Face. Because it's everything. It's everything that a Billy Idol song should be. He gets to croon. It's got a lot of emotion behind it, and then in the middle, all hell breaks loose, and it goes electric, and it is the story of the Billy Idol music.
And it's got French
it's great.
lyrics.
And the guitar solo is kind of wacky. It's got sound effects, a little bit of sci-fi stuff. So that one, I don't think Billy ever gets tired of doing it either. I never understood the huge hit, and you'd see an interview with the singer, and you go, "Oh man, I'm so tired of playing that song." Yeah, that song bought you your house. I'm never tired of playing these songs. You know, and I, you know, Idol is a really no show is ever the same with Billy Idol. So it's never boring. And we always allow enough sections in the song to everyone to improvise. We do a whole thing in the middle of White Wedding that is like a free-form kind of thing. And we don't try and keep it exactly the same every night. So it keeps it fresh. Yeah.
How was life hanging out with Vince Neil?
I survived. Well, making the record was great. It was a lot different for me because I'm a New York guy, and those guys are Southern California, and you know, I had to relocate to Los Angeles, and that was a little bit of a culture shock for me. But making the record was fantastic. We worked with a producer named Ron Nevison, and Ron was great engineer producer. He did Quadrophenia for the Who, and this guy did all those Heart singles, all those massive hits, and and I was, Vince was one of those guys who, like, you know, I was used to, in Billy Idol, the guitar solos are pretty economical, 8 bars, you know, keep them simple, memorable, all that. With Vince, it's like, I'd start with 8 bars and go, oh man, make it twice as long. I'd make it twice as long. Ah man, twice as long as that. So it was great, you know, and it was, you know, it's probably the heaviest rock record I ever did. And it was really enjoyable. Just as the record was released was the big Nirvana thing. And we suffered the same sales as Motley Crue. I think that Motley Crue record that they did with John Corabi is one of the best rock records. And they suffered the same thing. And I thought, well, the only way that Motley Crue can really survive and keep their audiences if Vince goes back. So I knew it was a matter of time. But it was a lot of, we supported Van Halen for 6 weeks, and I had already, you know, known Ed and made friends with him. And I'll tell you, when we were out on the road, Eddie's best friend was Steve Lukather, who I also knew. I had produced 2 tracks on a Steve Lukather record. Eddie produced 1. So it was the 3 fucking Musketeers out on the road. And we had a ball. And I watched Van Halen every night. I didn't miss a show, and it was just ungodly. And the stuff I loved that they played was like, you know, Pound Cake and all that stuff. I mean, his guitar solo is legendary, but and once again, you know, Ed didn't do a solo record. He's a band guy, you know, and him and Al were just like so locked in, and I loved watching that band every night. I just thought they were just the best of the best. And Eddie was the most generous mofo you could imagine. I was bringing out my vintage Marshalls that are temperamental. I was using like late 60s amps and speaker camera. And every sound check I'd have to bring 8 heads just to find 2 that would work that night before retubing or going. And Ed would say, oh, I ain't bringing that old shit out, you know. And he said, play through mine. And he had just brought out the PV 5150. So he arranged for me to play through his rig at the next sound check. And I really liked it. And it, you know, they would, literally a truck showed up in 2 days with the whole backline amps, and he gave me guitars right off his guitar rack, and generous to a fault. Ed, not that he needed to, but he never saw anybody as competition. Why would he? Say Van Halen. But he wanted other guitar players to shine as well, and he loved the fact that people were playing his model guitar and his amp. Back there, yeah.
What's the hardest part about recording an album in the studio?
The hardest part is people watching you. You know, and they're sitting at the desk and they're waiting for magic to appear. You know, show it to us. You know, and recording studios is expensive. We record now in our homes. You know, every producer I've worked with now has a home studio. We'll go in. Drummers have it bad because they got to go in a regular studio, and we're all behind the glass. And he's shifting. He's off the click. He's not playing to the click, you know. And but for us, you know, we work in you can't afford to make a record in a studio anymore. We just had a session over at Sunset Sound, which is where the Van Halen records were done, and you know, even as big an artist as Billy Idol is, you know, we had to watch the budget. You know, okay, we're going to go in for 2 days at $175 an hour and record all the drums for the record and make sure that we get them because, you know, it's expensive. You don't have record labels shelling out the kind of money. But musicians are benefiting from that because A, you got to watch where your pennies go because it's your money. We didn't realize that in the 80s. You're like, oh, $1 million to record the record? Great. You know, $500,000 to do the video? Then you got to pay it back. And then you're like, well, we've sold 3 million records and we don't have any money to show for it. So it is, in a way, it's better now because you're responsible and you, as a guitar player, but the best thing is that you can learn at home how to record guitars because used to be you would be at the mercy of the engineer and if if the engineer didn't understand what you were looking for in the guitar sound, it was like pulling teeth. You know, and I would bring in records, you know, I remember when we did Rebel Yell, you know, I'd bring in, you know, a Van Halen record and go, hear how much bottom end is on that guitar, because engineers were kind of like fuddy-duddy. A lot of these guys were like, they cut your guitar at, you know, 100 cycles and take it out because, oh my God, it's going to creep into the bass track or it's going to bleed in. Yeah, isn't that what's great about guitar? You know, it's supposed to cross at some point. But now you can kind of have an understanding. You go on YouTube and, you know, how to record an electric guitar cabinet. And there'll be a guy who's pretty good at it, showing you how to put the mics in phase and get all that stuff. So I think it's a lot better now. Yeah.
You used to play on an album by Adam Baum. Can you tell us, are you friends with him? He's rather unknown, but I think a great musician from New York.
Yeah, he was a buddy of mine, and Adam Baum. The record, interestingly enough, we were just hanging out, and we wrote some songs together, but the record was produced by Jack Douglas, who was the producer of Cheap Trick and Aerosmith. And sometimes I'll take a session if it's, you know, I mean, honestly, when I got called to do Michael Jackson, I think I was more excited to work with Quincy Jones than Michael Jackson. I was like, that guy's a living legend. You know, that Jackson guy's pretty cool too. But, so a lot of times I'll do a session because of the other people. So, yeah.
Tell me about Atomic Playboy.
Right, yeah. So I was, Billy Idol, after we did the third record, Billy wanted to move to Los Angeles. I was in New York, I had family, and my parents had just retired. I wanted to spend more time with them, and I had just gotten an apartment in New York, and I didn't want to move to Los Angeles. And at that time, some record companies came knocking on my door to do solo records, and one of the people who came knocking was Ted Templeman, who produced Van Halen and was the head of A&R at Warner Brothers. And I thought, you know, it'd be a shame to miss an opportunity like that. And I said to Billy, I'm going to stay in New York, and I'm going to do a solo thing. And he understood. You know, it was never any bad words. It was like, I'll see you down the road a little bit. You know, it was like he understood I needed to do my own thing. So the project was Atomic Playboys. Yeah, so it was, so I got, and things happen, I believe in things happening for a reason, because had it not been that I signed to Warner Brothers and worked with Ted, Ted was the one who got the call from Quincy Jones to play on the Michael Jackson record, because Quincy said, oh, we're doing the follow-up record to, you know, the Beat It, which was so successful. Who's the new, you know, hot guitar player? And Ted had just signed me and said, oh, you got to get this guy. So, next, yeah.
Can we get a biography from you? You've lived an interesting life.
Yeah.
And a box set. Would you be able to do that? Because you've done so many different.
It's really hard to get. We're working on trying to get the ownership on Atomic Playboys because I feel the record needs to be remixed. And also there's a couple of tracks that were written that weren't included on the album, and I want to go in and fix them and put them on and do it properly. It's, you know, record companies, here's the sad part. Some musicians sell their publishing and they don't own their masters. I don't own the master to Atomic Playboys or Flamenco Go-Go or any of these things. Yeah. Right.
Barrymore's an audience. Amazing.
You still have your hearing? Because we were a loud band. We were really loud. But, you know, my manager is in the process of trying to get Warner Brothers to give us back the record so that we can do something with it. And, yeah, but, you know, it's an ongoing process. Yeah, back there.
Thank you kindly. There's a song you played. Many times people own certain songs, but the song you played, you made it true to you. It's called A Savage.
Oh, right,
Do
yeah.
you remember?
Yeah.
What inspired you, and what settings did you use?
So The Savage, there was a record being done Sting's manager, Miles Copeland, was putting out a record as a tribute to this band called The Shadows. And The Shadows were an instrumental guitar group out of England. Actually, guitar player Hank Martin is from Australia. But every guitar player that you read about, Jeff Beck, Jimmy Page, they were all inspired by the Shadows. In the States, we had The Ventures. So he was doing this record, The Shadows tribute, and all of these guitar players were on it. A lot of heavy hitters. And I thought, when he said, would you do The Savage? I listened to it, and it had chord changes like flamenco. Yeah. And I said, oh yeah, I could do it in flamenco style. This way I'm not doing what Tony Iommi is doing, or any of the other guitar players on it. That was the impetus. Once Miles heard that, he offered me the deal to do Flamenco a Go-Go, because he said, oh, you play like that? And I said, yeah, I can do a whole record like that, Miles. Be even better with a little money. And so that's how that came about. But yeah, it's a Shadows tribute record.
And your settings on the guitar?
Oh, the settings.
You use nylon string.
There's a nylon string. It's actually one of these. Yeah. It's I record always DI. No microphones for these guitars, and just a nice reverb.
Yes.
And that's what I had. There was one other musician on it, my buddy Greg Ellis, who is a percussionist. And the two of us went in the studio for a couple of hours and recorded it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
What was going through your head when you were making the Look in Your Eyes solo with Vince Neil?
That was, yeah, so Look in Your Eyes is what is it, like, 10 minutes long? So Vince kept saying, make it longer. That section of the song didn't exist. Vince had written it with the original bass player in the band when I joined. And it needed a solo section, needed a bridge and all that, but I kind of wrote the solo section, and it was I was just given free rein and said, oh, I'm going to do this, it's kind of Spanish guitar changes, but yeah, it was once again, here's this guitar solo. The guitar solo is as long as the song itself. So, but it was great to get the thumbs up from Vince and the producer to, yeah, man, do your thing, kind of. Yeah, it was fun. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Next, yeah.
About songs and everything, are there any particular songs that you wrote that just came out of nowhere? That came out of nowhere. You're sitting down to record or listening to Billy Idol. And
all of the good ones come out of nowhere. All of the good ones, and I can never remember what the inspiration was. White Wedding is a song that Billy wrote, and it was the last song that was added to the first album because we didn't have, quote unquote, a hit single. So the record label and our producer locked Billy away in the studio one night. We were recording in LA, and this is he came up with White Wedding and demoed it up, and about 8 a.m, we were at the hotel and knocks on my door. I think I got the single, bleary-eyed, and puts it in the boombox, and all of that. Oh, yeah, it's just how we did it. And I added, so Billy had that on his original demo. He wrote that. And then I said, well, how do we end that phrase? And it's inspired by Sergio Leone, Once Upon a Time in the West, all those spaghetti westerns or whatever that, So that's an example of something that was totally planned, under the gun, gotta write a single, kind of thing. Other songs, so Eyes Without a Face, I was living in the basement of my parents' apartment in house, And the only radio station I could get on my little radio was in New York, CBS FM, the oldie station. And all of those oldies were like, Frankie Valli. And I thought, well, those are kind of cheesy, but I always thought that we should exploit that element of Billy Idol that's got the Elvis in it. Because I always saw him as our Elvis kind of thing. And I thought, let's make it, slow it down. What if you go, it's Eyes Without a Face. So I came into rehearsal and I'm playing that, just sitting there. And Billy walks in and goes, "Oh, what's that?" I go, "It's just this little thing." And he always kept a legal notepad with lyrics because we were writing for the next record, the follow up to the. Pulls it out and he's got the title, which is based on a French horror movie. It's Les Yeux Sans Visage, Eyes Without a Face. He says, I think I got something for that. The melody. I went, I don't know if we can get away with that. We're supposed to be like punk rock a little bit, But we both said, you know what? We both love the Beatles. And every Beatles record, no two songs are alike. No two albums are alike. They go from one song, Blackbird to Helter Skelter. I mean, that's as far apart as you can get on one record. And we said, the hell with it. Let's just see where it takes us. And one of the things we always did with Billy Idol's recording was we always knew we were going to have like a dance remix. So we had 64 bars in the middle that we didn't know what was going to go in there, but we needed that for a dance remix where it was just going to break down to drums or whatever. Because there was a lot of guys who were like, you give your song to outside of your producer and they would do the dance remix and get it played in the clubs. So we had this middle section, and I thought, the only thing is, it's a great song and everything, but it's got to have some electric guitar in it, So I told the guys, give me an hour. Let me see what I come up with. And I went in and Billy came back in an hour and went, oh yeah, man, I could sing this thing in there, a bit of rap, kind of thing. And because Blondie had Rapture, and she did the rap thing, so it was like, oh, we're going to delve into that a little bit, put a guitar solo in it. So that's really how it came about. But I don't really remember how all of the elements came about on that. Flesh for Fantasy, I have no idea how. It's the weirdest. I don't really know how, but what happened was that song started with us wanting to do like a Motown thing. Which is Motown, but also Hall & Oates had Man-Eater, which had that kind of thing. But they got it from the same place we did, which is James Jamerson, brilliant bass player. So we had this bass line, and I was listening to a lot of Alan Holdsworth at that point, and Alan would have these crazy stretches of he'd have all these kind of like clean, crazy chord things, and I thought, well, I don't know, I don't know where this song is going to go, but I don't want to play. The last thing I wanted to do is go. That wasn't going to get us anywhere. So I just put these weird chords. A lot of it was the sound inspired. I played my guitar through a Boss compressor, then into a Rockman on the super clean compressed into a Roland Space Echo, into a Roland Dimension D. So it was so effective. The guitar was just, and I had a volume pedal for it. So it was this kind of expansive, clean guitar thing. So all of these weird voicings, you know, weird. Try playing that through a Marshall. It's going to sound horrible, but it allowed us, even though, you know, the chords were like out of left field, they seemed to work against his melody. So, yeah, all the way in the back, in the back.
Did you use a Rockman through all the Rebel session at one point, or?
So we had a Rockman that we used for some of the quick demos, but the Rockman is only used on 2 songs, which was Flesh for Fantasy and Blue Highway is a Rockman. Although I wanted to replace it because, you know, a lot of bands were using Rockmans at that time, and I liked the clean sound on the Rockman, but the distorted sound was not my thing.
And what about daytime drama? Same things.
No Rockman on that. That's all Marshall stuff on it.
Okay.
Yeah. And what's interesting on that is the guitar is through an octave, but one of those Boss octave pedals, you know.
Tell Nick I say hi.
Yeah,
I have Steve. I have a George one of my
And so the guitar is doubling the bass with its octave the whole time. You know what the inspiration for that song is? Heart of the Sunrise by Yes. Nobody. Yeah. So the chords behind the bass keeps going. Bass never changes, and the guitar, the chord. So Heart of Sunrise is. Bass never changes, and it, you know. That was the inspiration for it, was this stagnant bass line that never changes, and these very cool 9th chords that Rick Wakeman was playing over it. But that really was the inspiration for that. Next, yeah.
Are there any new modern rock bands that you're a big fan of?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always aware of stuff. I always listen, you know, for me, new, what is particularly new, but I was disappointed. There was a band out of Sweden or something called Beardfish. And they did a record called Mammoth something, right? And it's some of the best. I don't like new prog bands. I still like my old prog, but 70s prog. But they really had the spirit of it, and the band ended up breaking up, or they ended up, before they broke up, because they really had a lot of cool influences, like traditional old school prog. Great songs. But then they started incorporating like more metal stuff, and I thought, yeah, that's, you know, All of Them Witches is a band that I really like. I found out about them through Nag's Guitars, and I thought they were really good. I mean, of the newer stuff, I don't know, you know. I mean, I listen to stuff, but like I said, I don't listen to a lot of rock these days. I mean, I'll be aware of it, you know, but I like more of the some of the blues stuff, the new blues. I can't say Eric Ailes is new because but that guy is a motherfucker. He's so freaking good. And I'm a Joe Bonamassa fan. I gotta tell you, man, that guy has done more for the guitar, and people want to say, oh, commercial, the guy's selling out Royal Albert Hall, and I think he's a great example of, I think he plays with a lot of emotion. And I like his tunes. He works with great musicians. He's got unbelievable technique. Thank you, Eric Johnson. But, you know, I like him. What is the girl? Her last name is Fish. Yeah, she's great. She's really great. Writes great tunes, makes great records. I think in the blues world, there just seems to be a little bit more bubbling up, stuff happening with the players, and they're getting recognized, and they're doing, like Slash has this tour that he's put a lot of these blues musicians on. So I'm not a blues guitar player by any means, but it's happening, there's some energy there. Whereas in a lot of the rock stuff, as soon as I hear Cookie Monster vocals, I'm out. There's a band called Ginger. The music is incredible. That girl is an incredible singer. That band could be huge. And she kind of mixes the Cookie Monster vocal with real, you know what I'm talking about. And she looks great. She's got the image, and the band is all great. But they're in this one, I think they're so afraid to lose that audience, which is, I guess in Europe it's very popular. But I just believe the potential for that band is so great. But maybe they're afraid to not do the Cookie Monster thing. I hear a lot of those kind of bands that have that are Gojira. Incredible music. I mean, absolutely mind-blowing. But the vocal thing, man, I'm just too old to get down with that. Next. Yeah.
How do you get, here you go, man. How do you get your hair looking so good?
Well, I can tell you, I guess it's not a wig. I'm somehow, so my older brother lost his hair when he was like 21. But he's in the right, he's an industrial designer, and he's now a professor. And I wouldn't look good without hair. I'd look like a rabbi or something. I don't know. Somehow, I have one uncle who's got a full head of hair and stuff, I just I've had this hairstyle since I was in high school, because in New York we were always proud of the bands that became popular in New York. And I grew up with the Stones and Ronnie Wood and Keith Richards, and then we had Johnny Thunders. Who was our Keith Richards, and he was very rudimentary, but he had the New York Dolls had great influences, and this is just when I was getting out of high school. I'd go to see all these bands that were just, now they call them punk rock and stuff. We call them glam rock or glitter rock or whatever, but it's just a look that it's just. It's my thing. And the Ramones, the Ramones, the New York Dolls, Kiss, and Leslie West are all from Queens, where I'm from. So they were all like our heroes, yeah. And the Ramones, it wasn't, when they came out in 1974, it wasn't punk rock. It was like, I don't know, man. Joey Ramone was singing melodies like the Shangri-Las, like the same thing that I got from ISF. Yeah, we just looked at the Ramones sounded like, to me, that they were playing, Communication Breakdown by Led Zeppelin. That's, to me, what the Ramones were all about. They were playing fast, edgy guitar rock, but if you're from New York, you love those bands. Yeah.
Yeah, I think we all appreciate you talking about other artists and influence and stuff. Question I have is, did you ever meet Randy Rhoads?
Randy Rhoads, no, never did. But I got an opportunity to. He was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, and Tom Morello was the one that got him in there. And they wanted a cover of Crazy Train, and we did it flamenco style. With you can find it on YouTube. It was like I forgot the name of the guitar orchestra, guitar something or other. The girl in it was Randy's pupil. She was his student, and she contacted me, and she knew I had done flamenco go-go, and she said, "Would you play the guitar solo on Crazy Train, but on Spanish guitar?" And from what I understood, that his family really liked what we did with it, and I knew Randy, the first time I saw him was that we used to get the Japanese music magazines, and Quiet Riot were popular in Japan. And I saw this guitar player who looked amazing, and he had the image, and he reminded me of Mick Ronson from David Bowie's band. And, I've always liked rock guitar guys, who looked the part, the Jeff Becks and the Brian Mays and all. It was all part of it, And then when he hooked up with Ozzy, I already knew who he was, but once again, I think the first Ozzy record with Randy is similar to what happened for me with Rebel Yell. There's hints of what I could do on the first record, but you given that opportunity where people say, man, go for it. And obviously they were, giving Randy that platform, and he wrote those tunes. So just such a brilliant guitar player. Yeah, he's one of the greats, man. We owe a lot. His influence is still, I think, really contemporary. He sounds like a contemporary guitar player. Yeah, man. Yeah.
What's the inspiration behind Dancing with Myself?
Well, I didn't write that.
Generation X.
It's a Generation X song, but it's actually Gen X, and Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols is playing most of the guitar on it. But what I understood from Billy talking about it is that they were he and Tony James, his co-writer in Gen X, the bass player, were in Japan, and they were at a club, and he saw all these people. They were just dancing with on their own, like not with anybody else. And they came out. Tony said, "Oh, look at them! They're dancing with themselves." And Billy went, "Ooh." That's how it happens. But we love playing that song. It's such a blast to do it. And if you want to see, we got the opportunity to play at the Hoover Dam, and we recorded it for DVD. And Steve Jones came up and joined us for that. And the minute that Steve plugs in and plays that song, it sounds like the record. Now, Billy Marson and I, Billy Marson is the other guitarist, we try and replicate it, and we, but we don't sound like the record. It's a thing, man. It's your ears. It's how he hears it and how he hits it. And Frank will tell you, because Billy did a series of concerts with Steve and Paul from the Sex Pistols, and Steve sounds like when he plays it, sounds like the record, right? He's a perfect example of just a great guitar player. Not particularly technical, but what's great about Steve, he's known as the godfather of punk rock guitar. If you ask him what his favorite album is, it's Boston. That's fucking punk rock. Seriously, because all these other punks are like, yeah, I was listening to Sum 41, or one of the Damned, or, this and that, because they want to seem like they're punk purists. Steve Jones doesn't care about any of that. He listened to Boston. So. Yeah.
What make you choose Money and Any Woman as cover songs?
So I'm not on either of those, but I play them. Moni was actually right before I met Billy. He went out to LA to record a 4-song EP, and Moni was on it. And there was a song called Baby Talk, and they also put Dancing With Myself on it, and Untouchables was another Gen X song. That was the first new stuff that I heard from Billy when I first met him. He had just recorded that. And I guess Moni was one of the first songs he got laid to. At least that's what he said. So, Frankie Banali is the drummer on Moni from Quiet Riot. That's a little known fact. LA Woman we always played, because when I met Billy, what are we going to play? Covers. So we did LA Woman, we did a couple of Dawes songs, Creedence, all the stuff that we loved. We did a couple of Lou Reed songs, because we did Dancing With Myself, but when you first meet a new musician, you don't have material, so we're going to do cover songs, and that was LA Woman was one of the first. Yeah. Next. Yeah. Never admit it. I'll admit to working with anybody. Yeah. Peter Gabriel. I'm a huge Peter Gabriel fan. I think most guitar, we started, you asked Ingve what his first inspiration was. It's Genesis singing about a pound. But from the moment I saw there was a TV show called The Midnight Special. When we went to concerts in the early 70s, there was a lot of girls there to see Yes and Emerson, Lake and Palmer and all these kind of bands. It was very different. But that was Peter Gabriel, and I've always felt he's really adventurous. He's always had great band and great musicians, and he's taken his career into different areas. But that voice, man, something about the sound of his voice. Next, anybody else? Yeah.
Do you like Cacophony?
Don't know much about them.
Like with Jason Becker and Marty Friedman?
Oh, well, Jason is a whole nother story. I mean, we raised money. But he was in another band, though, wasn't he?
Yeah, David Lee Roth. After Bench.
That's where okay, so that was the band before. What a guitar player.
Yeah.
What an incredible guitar player. There were those guys, of course, after Eddie Van Halen, there's a lot of guys who played in that kind of style. But there were other guys who were doing it naturally, and there was like him and Paul Gilbert.
Yeah.
And then Martin DiMartini. What an incredible guitar player. Sweetest guy in the world, too. I keep saying that me and Steve Lukather and Warren DiMartini should do a tour together, playing all this stuff, because it's a shame, because Warren still plays badass, and I think he should be out there playing guitar for people. So and Jason, we raised money for him, and I just sent him a video message for his birthday, and he's got all these people on there to do it, and I've never met him. But I said if I'm through there, I want to come meet him and say hello. So yeah, he's incredible.
On Atomic Playboy, awesome album, by the way. Did you sing "Woman of a Thousand Years"? Was that
did,
you?
Yeah, I did.
Awesome.
Sorry about that.
It was good.
When I heard it, I'm not a singer. I have no great love of singing. From the time I was a little kid, when we watched, there was the Elvis '68 comeback special, and Elvis came back and looked great and everything. And my aunt and my mom and my dad and my uncle, we were all watching this, and the females go, "Oh, Elvis, he looks great now." And I saw Scotty Moore behind playing guitar, and I said to my dad, "That's what I want to do." I was only like 8 years old at the time. I want to be that guy. I want to be the guitar player. And a lot of like Santo and Johnny, which is they were a duo. They did Sleepwalk, and then one guy's on pedal steel, and I hear Jeff emulating that. But influences are weird, man. Sometimes you're influenced by stuff you never. My biggest guitar influence, bar none, is Steve Howe from Yes. I play nothing like Steve Howe, but I look at a song the way that he did. When I heard what he was doing on the Yes album, like in one song he'd have folk guitar, he'd have fuzz guitar, jazz guitar. His influences were like, Chet Atkins and Segovia and all this kind of stuff. So I looked at the way Steve Howe orchestrated a song, as opposed to Eric Clapton, who plugged in and was brilliant, but played basically one guitar track, or Van Halen, one guitar track. My thing was more the Jimmy Page, Steve Howe, orchestrate the thing, paint the colors of the guitar for the song. So I'll take a couple more questions, because I want to be able to sign stuff for you guys if you want. So,
Simple one.
yeah.
You play something else on guitar. Other instruments like.
Oh man, no. Thank God for Logic Pro, because I can go in there and move that stuff. It takes me forever to do, because when I present a song to, let's say, Billy, if I'm demoing out the music, I have keyboards. But this has helped me a lot, because I plug this in MIDI into Logic, and it spits out the notes for me. So I'm able to do it that way. I play bass. I love playing bass. I've played bass on every Billy Idol record uncredited. Well, they started to credit me after a while, which I don't really care about. But I love playing bass. It's just like it's just a whole different thing. Man, I'm the worst drummer in the world. So no, I don't play anything else. And one more, back there.
Can you talk about the new album and any chance you're playing on the 7 string?
7 string. I have one. Not great on it. I'll leave that for Steve Vai and the young guys. I love the sound of it. Here's the thing, in Billy Idol music, there's no need for it. Our bass lines are so predominant. That space is reserved for the bass, which I play most of the bass tracks. So I'm like, I don't want 7 string on there, I'm gonna put the bass. Was that? That was the only question, right?
Can you talk about the new album?
Oh, the new album. So,
any tidbits, any teasers?
right, so one cool thing is that we like to work with new people, and we hooked up with a record producer, songwriter, because most producers now are, they're songwriters as well, or they'll play multi-instruments. So we hooked up with a young guy named Tommy English, and we got together with him and wrote a bunch of songs, and he produced it. What's cool is that we're so careful of recreating what we've already done. We don't want to tread stuff, and I think a lot of artists of our generation, we don't want to do Rebel Yell Part 2. We've done Rebel Yell, we play it live, it's still out there, and so we kind of go, if it's in that territory, we go, no, we've already done it. What's cool about Tommy English, he's in his 30s, and he grew up on those records, and he'll find a way to take that energy and take some of those elements of the guitar and drums and channel it in a new way, where it's not recreating that, but it's in a new exciting way. So we like working with new, young musicians, and there's a lot of songwriting is so important to musicians these days. The emphasis is really on song structure stuff, whereas in the 80s, it was like you hired a producer who could get you the best drum sound in the world. How can we get Bob Rock? Because, the Black Album and Dr. Feelgood, that's why the Cult hired Bob Rock to do the electric record. It was Sonic Temple. Yeah. So you wanted an engineer producer who could get you that big sound. We're not so reliant on that. We know more now, and you can get bigger drum sounds more easily. Musicians know more about engineering now. Back then we didn't, so we were at the mercy. So we like working with young guys who are mainly songwriters. And we've worked with some really, really, really good ones. I'll take one more question.
Tony Franklin.
I've worked with him briefly.
Yeah?
Yeah. But he appears on, Derek Sherinian is keyboard player, and I've guested on his records. But he sends you the files, so I'm on songs with Tony Franklin, and I'm not in the room with the guys.
He's very active on social media. He's playing with Blue Grain, right?
Oh, I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. But he's like the king of the fretless.
Incredible.
Yeah. I did one show with him in Japan, but it just was I didn't get time to spend with him. Okay, and there was one other person. Yeah.
Well, I just came to Canada, and I heard many rock and metal musicians playing and collaborating with fusion artists from different countries.
Yeah.
So I just was wondering, would there be any chance that you would be playing or collaborating with any classical artists from India or?
Oh wow, that's a great question. So my dream was always to collaborate with Paco de Lucia, and there was management had put out the feelers, and the first time I wanted to collaborate with him, he was unavailable because he was down in the Caribbean recording with Bryan Adams, and he couldn't make it. And I was like, yeah, I understand why. He did the guitar on "When a Man Loves a Woman," and the guitar is just incredible. So that was the first time we tried to get a hold of him, and then the second time was he passed away. So that was one time I wanted to collaborate with him. I'd love to work with El Shankar you know, any of the, I mean, there's some guitar player who's on YouTube who, he's a rock guitar player, but he does these ragas, and his technique is, I don't know the guy's name, but he's developed this kind of, it almost sounds like sitar, but it's not a special guitar, and I don't know his name.
You're talking about Zitar.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Guitar player though, right?
He actually modified into the Zitar.
Yeah, okay, maybe it's him.
His name is Niladri.
Okay, and he does a kind of guitar, incredible. And but I've never been to India. I want to go really, really badly. It's one of the few countries that I haven't been to yet. But wouldn't it be? I mean, just see, this is what bands did back then when they were like inspired by stuff. You know, when Jimmy Page and Robert Plant wanted to, you know, have some Indian influence, they go and they came up with Kashmir and stuff like that. And that's, I've worked with Algerian musicians and French musicians, and it's great because even if you don't even speak the language, man, you pick up the instrument and you understand each other. You can communicate. So maybe one day I will. All right. So if you got stuff.
Signing, he's going to sign everything. We just got to do a little shifting, reorganizing. So whoever has anything to be signed, just start a lineup right here. And another thing is salsa. The guy behind you, Pete, tell each other what band you used to play in. Salsa. Yeah. Pete.
Hi, Pete.